we're going to be thinking about Palm Sunday. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. It isn't Palm Sunday. You're right. And I got a little bit confused with this as well, thinking, why are we doing Palm Sunday 2 weeks before Palm Sunday? But what I think is a really good answer to that question is that the leaders wanted to make sure that when we got to Palm Sunday, we'd already thought about it. So that's why we're doing it today. Now, if you are under about 10, we're going to ask you to do something while the rest of us are having a little think. So over here, they're on the tables. Just have a little look at what you're going to be making. You're going to be making some of these, okay? Now, you're going to have to speed make. So you're going to make as many as you can. Don't worry if you don't have sticks for them all. Just a little note, these little sticks here have actually come out of flags. So if you could not take these home with you, that would be great. But you're going to make these on the table over here with Heather, and then we're going to use them after the talk. So if you want to go and help Heather over here, make your way over now. She's going to be doing some crafty things over there on the tables. And you can make as many as you can. George, how many do you think you can make? 49? Yeah, 49. That's great. Brilliant. So we'll just give people a few minutes to go over there. Brilliant. And then I'm going to ask Graham to come and read our Bible verses for today to us, if that's all right, Graham. Are you going to move these? Yep.
So two passages, one from Zechariah and one from Matthew.
Miley, do you want to go? Thanks.
Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you righteous and victorious, lowly, and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. I will bend Judah as I bend my bow and fill it with Ephraim. I will rouse your sons, Zion, against your sons, Greece, and make you like a warrior's sword. And as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and at once you will find a donkey tied there with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." And when Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" The crowds answered, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee."
Thanks, Graham. So you get to look ahead there. This is the Bible passages that we're looking at today. So we've got two passages that we're having a little look at. And right now, as a church, if you're not normally with us, we've got a series on prophecy. So we're talking about prophecy together. And we're using these two passages to help us do that. So the first thing we find out in these two passages is that the people, both in Zechariah's time and in the time of Palm Sunday, were living in troubled times. The people in Zechariah's time were not living in their own country. They were having to live somewhere different. It was very difficult for them. Then if we go forward to Palm Sunday, we see the Jewish people who were living with the Romans in charge. This was not a nice time to be alive in either of the cases. But what we see is that Zechariah speaks into that. And I was thinking about this week, about if we look at the news at the moment, we see a world that's living in troubled times. We see the war in the Ukraine. We see what's happening in Israel and Gaza, in the Sudan. And we look at it and we think we are living in troubled times. And I think that's why this word is for right now, because it's a word of hope. These people, both the people that Zechariah spoke to at the time and the people who were going to be there on Palm Sunday, were people that were living in difficult times, not in places that they had chosen to be. And they were a people who needed hope. They needed somebody to come along and say something that was going to mean that actually these troubled times that they found themselves in, they'd be able to think, it's okay, because in the song that Chris, one of the songs that you did, it said, hold on, this is not the end. And that's what Zechariah was saying. He was saying to the people right then, hold on, hope is coming. This isn't the end. This isn't where the story ends. And then when we get to Palm Sunday and we see the words that Zechariah said spoken about, we know that hope is here. So the whole message of this story, this prophecy, these words that Zechariah speaks out is, I know it's not unrealistic. It's not saying, just pretend everything's great. Just come in with your best Sunday smile on. And when people say to you, how are you this morning? You say, I'm great, thank you, when you're really not. That isn't what this passage says. It doesn't say, let's pretend everything's all right. It says, we know it's really not. But there's good news and there's hope in the middle of the story. So when I was looking at this passage this week, Zechariah tells the people a king is coming. And it's like, as he goes through the bit that Graham first read, he gives us pieces of the jigsaw. How many of you like to do jigsaws? Anybody like to do jigsaws? You see, I really don't like doing jigsaws. I don't think I have enough patience. I like to put the last piece in. I like to do that, but I don't have the patience. Tim is brilliant. He gets all the colours, all the edges first of all, and then he puts the same coloured pieces together, and then it all emerges, and then I come in right at the end. And I don't put the last one in because that's a bit mean, but I do put maybe the second to last one in. But it's like Zechariah is saying, just have a look. Here's a piece of the jigsaw. Here's another piece of the jigsaw. Here's another piece of the jigsaw. When you put it all together, you're going to find out about this king that is coming. So what does he tell us in the passage that Graham has read out to us? He says a number of things. He says, see, your king comes to you. He's really making the point. There's going to be a king coming. If you like, I don't know if you've ever watched any mysteries on the television. I know my mum likes to watch these sorts of things. And she's trying to work out who did it. Okay, in the end. And usually my dad, who has watched absolutely nothing that has happened, goes, oh, it's this person, and it often is. But actually, what's happening here is that Zechariah is saying, here's some things about the person who's going to come, who's going to be the absolute king. So when it happens, keep your eyes open, because when you see these things, you'll know this is the real king. So he's saying, here's the clues that I'm giving you. It's going to be a king. What kind of king is he going to be? Well, it's good news for us that he's not going to be Elvis. He's not going to be the Lion King or King Kong or King Julian, but he's going to be a righteous king, and he's going to be victorious. So these are people that are living in battle times. Here's a king that's coming, and he's going to bring victory. And then he's going to ride on a donkey. A bit odd, but again, you see, when the people were there on Palm Sunday, then they saw in reality what Zechariah had talked about before. And some of them must have whispered to each other, do you remember what he said? Look what we're seeing. So it was like, it's coming, and here's your clues. And if you're good, you've written them down, and you start to see them unfold. He also says, prisoners will be set free. Hope will be restored. The hope they needed was coming in the form of this king. So Zechariah is there 500 years before Palm Sunday saying, listen, this thing is going to happen. And when it does, it's going to look like this. And when you see it, hope is just around the corner. And so he also says some other things. He says this king is going to take away the instruments of war. So we are living in a time where that hasn't happened yet. We see war every time we switch on our news. He says he's going to bring peace. And in some ways, we do already have that. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This one's a bit complicated because it's one of these where some of it's happened and some hasn't happened quite yet. He sets up his kingdom. His kingdom's going to be totally different to anything that had gone before. And then he's going to rule forever. And we as people often pray, your kingdom come. And this is the kind of kingdom that's coming. So Zechariah, if you like, he's over here. Okay, he's in the Old Testament, and he's speaking to people, and he's saying, this is what's coming. This is the kind of king that is coming. And these are some of the things that you're going to see. And then the Bible moves on. Jesus is born. I'm not sure this timeline's quite right, so if you're a historian, don't worry too much about the length between. But then the Bible moves on, and Jesus is born. And actually, some of the things that have already been said about Jesus in prophecies become true the moment that Jesus is born. The word becomes flesh. So already the prophecies, the things that have been said about him, start to come true. And then the story continues on. And as we get to Palm Sunday, another prophecy comes true. So imagine that you're there on Palm Sunday, and maybe it looks a bit like this, maybe not quite, but there you are. And you're in the crowd on Palm Sunday, and you see this man coming on a donkey, and you think, what's that about? What is going on here? And you see the people, and they're calling this man a king. But you see, if he's a king, he shouldn't have come on a donkey, because that's not the way that kings come. He didn't have a private jet because they weren't invented then, but he could have had a nice horse, and that's the way that kings arrived, but he didn't do that. But then you start to think about, hang on a minute, there's something about this that I've heard before. There's something about this story that I think somebody called Zechariah might have said something about. Didn't Zechariah tell us that the king would come riding on a donkey? And look, here he is on a donkey. And then he says he's going to take away war and peace, but we still see that. And this kingdom is still to come. So what can we learn from this amazing story? Well, the first thing we can learn is that Jesus wasn't the kind of king that everybody wanted. So some people were waiting for this victorious king. They were waiting for someone that was going to come and crush everything that had gone on and all of the Roman army, and that's what they were waiting for. And then when Jesus arrives on a donkey, they go, it's not him. It's definitely not him. This isn't the king that we are waiting for. We're waiting for a warrior, and here comes a servant king. And I think the first question we can ask ourselves then is, what kind of a king do we want to serve? Are we able to let Jesus be the kind of king that he is in the Bible, or do we want to make him into what we want him to be? Do we want him to fit into our idea of what a king should look like? Do we want him to be things that actually the Bible never says he was? Are we willing to accept him as he is and make him king of our lives? One of the other things we can learn is that prophecy is powerful. Now, you're not looking that excited this morning, and I can tell that even without my glasses on, and you're a bit blurred. But when I read this week, now when I'm preparing to speak, I always have a good read of some commentaries. And I said to Graham, I think this is the most excited I've ever been reading two bits together in the Bible. Because I just think it's amazing that, Ellie, if you want to play with that, that's great, but can you do it just over here? That's brilliant. So I think that this is the most excited that I've ever been, because we see this bit spoken about to a people in troubled times, and that's what we are in lots of ways in the world right now. So it's a now word as well. It's not just about the fact that it comes true at Palm Sunday, but it's the fact that it keeps being true for us in the lives that we live right now. We live in troubled times. You might have troubled times in your own lives. And actually, this message says, well, this king that came on Palm Sunday is still king. And whatever you're living with, whatever is troubling you, this passage says, not only has the king come, but he's coming back again. And when that happens, everything is made right. Now, if you're not excited yet, I'm going to carry on for a little bit so you've got time. But I just think it's amazing that this man, Zechariah, I wonder what it was like to be him. He's there. He's living in troubled times, and he thinks, God speaks to him, and he thinks, right, you want me to go and tell these people a king is coming on a donkey. How is that going to help anybody? But he does what he's asked to do. He delivers the word, and he doesn't know, does he, that 500 years later, actually everything he spoke would come true. He doesn't know that 2,000 years later, you would be sat in West Street Christian Fellowship this morning, learning about the fact that the words that he spoke came true and are true. He just does what he's asked to do in that moment, and it has eternal significance. What else can we learn? That we live in the now and the not yet. So Zechariah, some of what Zechariah said has happened. He says there's a king that's coming and is going to be victorious. And because we live after Easter, not in Palm Sunday, we know that that king has come. And that when he rose again on Easter Sunday, just a week later, everything that Zechariah said about him being victorious was true in that moment. I once preached on Easter Sunday. I love preaching on Easter Sunday. I also love preaching at Christmas. In practice, I just like preaching. But I once preached, and I was looking back, and the title of my sermon was Hope is Unleashed. That in the moment that they go to the tomb and it's empty, hope is unleashed, and it can never be put away again. It's there. It's there for everybody that wants it. So some bits in the story have happened, but some bits we're still waiting for. We don't have this king who rules over us all yet. That kingdom has not yet been established. We're awaiting people. Maybe you are waiting for things that God's promised you. Maybe you're waiting for things in your life that you're hoping for, and you're thinking, could this ever happen? Would it ever be true? And the words in this story, the story itself says, it's keep waiting, because if God has promised something, he will do it. And then I think the final thing that we learn from this story is that we live loved and hopeful. But we're a people that are waiting for the end of a story. I love reading, okay? I wanted to dress up on World Book Day, but apparently it's frowned upon if you don't have children. But I did go into one of my lectures with a vague outfit around World Book Day, because books are great. But the great thing is we know the end of the story. We're not there yet, but we know what has happened. It's like you start your book, and you know sometimes when you're reading a book and you're trying to work out, is it worth my time? And you go to the last 2 pages just to see what happens. We've already got that. We already know what is happening. So perhaps you need some fresh hope this morning. Perhaps you need to know that you're loved, and it's here in the stories that we read. I wrote this: we can celebrate that what was lost can be found, what was dead can live, and that much more is still to come. So this amazing story of this man, Zechariah, who says, listen up, these things are going to happen. You are a people with a king, a people with hope and a people that are loved is still true. I don't know how you came this morning. I don't know how you feel. I don't know if you feel really loved. I don't know if Mother's Day is a difficult day. I don't know any of those things, but God does. And the king that we read about in the story is still the king today, and he loves us. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to invite the children to come back. Father, I want to thank you for this amazing story. I want to thank you that Zechariah spoke out the words you gave to him. Might we be a people that are willing to do that? I want to thank you that you always fulfill prophecy. So it came true on Palm Sunday. We want to thank you that you sent Jesus, that he loves us, that we're a people full of hope. We're a people full of love. Help us to just spend some time with you today thinking, what bit of this story is God trying to speak to me right now? Thank you that the words in the Bible are not dead, they're living, and so are you. And you want to speak into our lives and make sense of whatever's going on for us so that we can have a good relationship with you and we can live as a people of hope and of love. Amen.